Welcome back to my channel. I hope that everyone is well and I hope that you're having a good start to November. I wanted to share with you the books that I had read in October. I don't know how, but I managed to read 12 books in October, which I'm so proud of. I am a really slow reader. I don't really get through many books per month. I think the most I usually get through is about 5. So to have read 12 books in October, where 2 of them were over 600 pages, is incredible. I am currently waiting for the start date of my new job, so I've had a lot of spare time, which is probably how I managed to read 12 books. And I wanted to just go through the books that I read with you and let you know what I thought about them. The first book I read in October was My Year of Rest and Relaxation. A Year of Rest and Relaxation is a book about a girl who decides to spend a whole year asleep, and she abuses prescription medication from a psychiatrist, and she basically just spends the year sleeping, or sleeping as much as she can. I loved this book. I thought it was a really good exploration of depression and addiction. I thought it was a really good way of looking at that need to disappear into nothingness and the overwhelming urge to just sleep away the days because life is just too much. I found that I really related to this book. In the past, I have abused prescription medication to help me sleep for days. And so I really saw myself in this character, and I really understood that need and that want and that desire to just not exist, but in a way that's not like suicidal, in a way that you just want the world to stop for a minute and you just want a break. I gave this book 4 stars. I then read Luster. This book is about a girl who enjoys sex. She isn't really fussy about the men that she sleeps with, and she connects with this one guy who is married, and one thing leads to another, and she ends up living with him, his wife, and their child. And it's a very interesting book. I thought that it was a really good look into the world of female sexuality and the inner thoughts that can come with that. I really enjoyed all the dynamics between the characters. I was really interested by this book, but I just kind of felt like there was something lacking, and I wanted more depth. I wanted to know the characters more. I just felt that there was something missing. So I gave that book 3 stars. I then read Olive. It's a book where the female main character doesn't want a child, and she doesn't want to have babies, and it's basically about her journey with this decision whilst her 3 best friends are either having babies, have babies, or want a baby. I thought this was an amazing way to bring in the topic of women that don't want children, and I think it was done beautifully. I think it was handled very carefully, and I think it was handled very sensitively. And I think it was done in an unapologetic way. I feel like this book could really open up the door to start the conversation around women that don't want children, because I know that's still seen as quite taboo in our society. I don't know if taboo is the right word, but I feel like it is in our society, and it shouldn't be. And I feel like more people should read this book if they're looking to understand why women don't want children, because I feel like it was a great example of what it can be like. I gave Olive 5 stars. I read The Girl in Question, which is the second book to All the Girls I've Been. I absolutely adored this. Usually I am a bit iffy when it comes to second books in a series, especially when I absolutely adored the first book. All the Girls I've Been is such an incredible book. I don't really want to go over what happens in The Girl in Question because I don't want to give spoilers if you haven't read All the Girls I've Been. However, it continues to follow Nora's journey along with her friends, and we get to explore her friends a lot more in this book, which I love. I absolutely love her girlfriend and her best friend. Part of me may even say I liked it more than the first book. However, the first book does hold a very special place in my heart. And so I gave the girl in question 5 stars. I then read Blue Light Hours, which was a book that I received from NetGalley. This book is about a girl who lives in South America and she moves to America to go to university. And it just basically follows her and her mother talking to each other over Skype over the duration of 5 years. I found this book to be so lovely. It was really nice to see the connection between the mother and daughter and to see their relationship grow. I really enjoyed this book. Felt like it was really heartwarming and I loved the characters. This book was very simple. There wasn't a lot going on, but it felt like a really, really lovely read that just kind of warmed my heart. And so I gave this book 4 stars. I then read Half a World Away by Mike Gale, and if you know me, you know I love anything by Mike Gale. I adore his writing. The way he words things is beautiful, and I highly recommend looking for a Mike Gale book and reading one, because I hope you will fall in love too. He has such a gorgeous way with words, and his stories always tug on your heart and pull out all the emotions. Half a World Away is about a girl who was in the care system and she's searching for her brother who had been adopted, and they find each other and they reconnect, and it's about their relationship together, and they have like their own side stories that go along with the story of them reconnecting. Such a gorgeous book. It absolutely destroyed me by the end. It was so heartbreaking, but also like a big warm hug. I gave this book 4 stars, and that was only because it wasn't as good as All the Lonely People, which is another Mike Gale book, and I gave that one 5 stars, and I didn't think this one quite reached the 5-star mark, but it was very close. I then entered my ACOTAR era, which I was so excited about. I was actually kind of terrified to go into this world because people say such good things about it, and I was so scared it wouldn't live up to expectation, but boy was I wrong. This book was so good. So A Court of Thorns and Roses follows a girl who is human and she kills a fairy, and then a High Lord, who is a fairy as well, tells her she has to go with him or she has to die. And so she goes with him to live in Prynthian, and it's about her adjusting to life there, and there's lots of twists and turns. There is this big evil that is sweeping the land, and there are all these creatures that are scary and dangerous, and it is just so good. I can't do it justice without spoiling the book, but if you haven't read A Court of Thorns and Roses, you definitely should. I gave this one 4 stars. I then read another NetGalley book, which was The Anti-Heroes. This is a book about a group of people told from the perspective of 2 different women who are best friends. And they're all in a coffee shop and there's a robbery. Basically, they all decide to change their life and they start going to this group or this class run by a man who's really like mysterious, and they don't really know anything about him, and it just follows their journey of changing their life and implementing changes for the better. It's really, really lovely. It was so wholesome and such a nice read. I thought it was a really good book. There is one sort of twist in the book, and I feel like that wasn't explored enough in depth. I feel like it was kind of just thrown in there and we didn't really get to understand what was going on with it. So I would have loved for that to have been explored more. Overall, I really enjoyed this book and I gave it 4 stars. I then read A Court of Mist and Fury, and oh my gosh. Whew. If you watch my weekly reading vlog, you will know just how much this book ruled my entire 2 days of reading it. It still rules my life now, and I finished it like a week ago. This book was so incredible. I can't even begin to put it into words. I don't know how to summarize it. I don't know how to sum up the feeling I got when I read this book. I won't tell you what it's about, obviously, because it's the second book in a series, but please go and read A Court of Thorns and Roses and then read A Court of Mist and Fury and then move on to the rest, because they are so worth it. I gave this book 5 stars. In all honesty, I think this is a 6-star read. I think it has reserved a spot in my special 6-star list. I read Tender is the Flesh this month. This book is about a world in which animals have caught a virus that is deadly to humans, and so we can no longer eat animals, and therefore people have started to factory farm humans. The meat industry becomes cannibalism, basically. And it follows the journey of a man who works in one of the processing plants, or like a factory farm where they kill the humans. It follows his life, really. I think it follows his life over like the course of like a year or something. I really liked the premise of this book. I really liked the idea. I thought it was going to be really good. I went in with such high expectations and high hopes, and I just felt disappointed. Just felt that the book didn't really have anything going on. It focused more on the world that they lived in now and describing it, rather than like anything really happening in his life and anything interesting going on. It was a lot of description about what the new world is like, without much substance of how it affected him. And so I just didn't really gel with this book. But because I loved the idea, I did give it 2 stars. I also found the ending really odd, and I didn't like the ending. I then read A Court of Wings and Ruin, and just I can't begin to describe how the ACOTAR series has changed my life. A Court of Wings and Ruin was so good. I think it's joint with A Court of Mist and Fury. Joint first, out of my favourite of the series. I can't choose between the two. Court of Wings and Ruin was really good. It focused a lot more on war and politics, and it was a lot more action-packed than the other 2 books. I found the other 2 books focused a lot more on the romancy side of things, whereas this one really focused in on the action and the war and the politics. But I loved that. There was still romance in it, don't get me wrong, but I just loved that we got to explore more of the world of Perinthian, and we got to know characters a lot better. I absolutely devoured the last like 200-300 pages. Obviously gave this one 5 stars. Again, I think it deserves a spot in my 6-star list because it was just so good. The last book I read in October was A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is the 4th book in the ACOTAR series. This one was so lovely. It was really wholesome. It was definitely a filler book. It's less than 300 pages. You could tell it was kind of like a Christmas special. That's not to say it's not good. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was so wholesome, so lovely. It was really nice to see everyone and the characters kind of settling down a little bit and having a little bit of a break from all the action of the last book. I did give it 3 stars because it didn't feel like the same kind of vibe. Writing was different and it just felt a bit rushed. I felt a little bit bored reading it, but it was still really lovely. And then there was a book I did not finish in October. I read about 50% of it and I was like, this book is actually so disgusting and vulgar. I'm gonna DNF it because I just couldn't. I wanted to read Haunting Adeline. I read that I was supposed to read Satan's Affair before reading Haunting Adeline so that I would understand the backstory. Could not finish Satan's Affair. It was grotesque. I apologise if you like that book, but I don't want to read about someone graphically, sexually getting off on dead bodies. I don't want to read that. Not my vibe. And I didn't like it. It's just not my vibe. So I did DNF that one, and I probably won't be reading Haunting Adeline now, which is fine by me. I don't mind. It was just because I couldn't sleep and it's on Kindle Unlimited, so I thought I would read it. But I don't like the first one, so I'm not going to read that one now. So those were the books that I read in October. I'm hoping to read 12 books in November. I would love to know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were. I'd love to know if you agree with what I think. I'd also love to know if any of my thoughts on these books have inspired you to read any of them. And I shall see you next week for another video. Bye!